Across the timeline with 10. Knocked away. Dudley Bradley. Dudley Bradley for the stop. 70 to 68. 3, 2, 1. Matthews off balance, off the glass. Dudley Bradley's defense did it. And ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good. Off the glass. Oklahoma calls timeout. But the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma.
Turns it over. Kenny Williams with the steal. Gets it to Barry. 17 seconds to go. Barry, Duke not fouling. Gets it to Johnson. To Pinson for the highlight. Inbounds goes deep on the right sideline to make. Holy smokes, a long three! Are you kidding me? Holy cow! Pinson gets all the way to the rim, and what a way to pick up his first field goal of the season by throwing down the tomahawk.
With 20 seconds left to play, goes back to Michael Jordan, jumper from out on the left, good! 63-62, 13, 12, 11, Georgetown with one timeout. Fred Brown looking, way to Worthy! Worthy 5! The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship!
Rebounded by Weber. Michigan out of timeout. Weber front court, Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. They're out of timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul. Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out to Head. Long outside shot. Short rebounded. May! It's over. Carolina has won the national championship. How about them Tar Heels? They are the national champions.
That's it! Make room for 2017. The Tar Heels are the national daggum champions.
This is the Roy's Boys Podcast with your host, Joshua Marlowe.
Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the Roy's Boys Podcast, powered by Carolina Electrical Services. For all your electrical needs, call Jacob Marlowe at 704-320-7357. And when he gets back from Colorado, he'll take care of them. Josh and Anthony, we're here with you as always. And today we've actually got a loaded show for it to be the middle of June. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into this episode, Anthony. Today we're looking at Garrison Brooks as we continue our dive into individual player season recaps. And Garrison's the first guy that we'll talk about that will be on next year's team. Of course, we've already done Kenny Williams, Luke May, Cam Johnson, and then the two freshmen that left early, and Kobe White and Nazir Little. And Garrison Brooks, I thought, had a really spectacular 2018-2019 campaign. You know, his number-wise weren't great, only 8 points and 6 rebounds. So it wasn't, jumping off the charts. He did shoot 57% from the field, though, which was a very good clip for a big man. And that, you would figure that with him, of course, being around the rim. But this is a guy who we saw from his freshman year to sophomore year grow the most on the team, and got a really big role, and a guy that's going to have to continue to grow as we move forward with Garrison Brooks.
I think the most important thing that you mentioned there was the growth from his freshman year to his sophomore year. I think you were right. He's the guy that grew the most out of anybody on the team, and it, frankly, in my mind, wasn't really all that close, maybe besides Cam Johnson. I really feel like he was the guy that just took the biggest step. You could also argue maybe Brandon Robinson, but it's just something about the way that Garrison plays. He's not the most physically scary player. He's not a guy that you're going to look at like maybe Armando Bacot, who just arrived on campus. You don't look at him and say, okay, this guy is really going to be a star. He's going to cause a lot of problems in the post. He's 6'9". He's really not all that big body-wise, but he's a real technical guy. I thought, there were times where maybe he wasn't the best rebounder on the floor. I'll be interested to see how that changes with a guy like Luke May gone, because I think Luke May really did develop into that guy that was a dominating rebounder at times. Now you lose Cam Johnson as well, who had a lot of length. That was another guy that you could lean on and would occasionally get in there and get bored. So he might be counted on a little more this year to get in there and really mess some things up on the glass, cause some problems inside. I'll be interested to see if he takes another step forward this year in what should be a bigger leadership role.
Yeah, I think one thing that's going to help with his rebounding numbers is we assume he'll slide from the 5 to the 4 with the arrival of Bacot.
Definitely.
Assuming that Bacot earns the right to start for Roy Williams. So he'll be faced up with smaller guys at the 4 spot. And you talk about Luke May developing into a natural rebounder for a guy who isn't as athletically talented as Garrison Brooks is. You could easily see Garrison Brooks get up to almost 9 to maybe even 10 rebounds a game just by sliding up a different spot and on the floor, being on with different positioning. It was just I think his season we got treated with the first game of the year at Wofford. He gave us 20 points and 5 rebounds. And while we didn't expect that from him every night, it was just, okay, we knew he's capable of that.
Right.
And he also had some other big performances in the season. He gave you 8 points and 10 rebounds in the home win against NC State. And then at Cameron Indoor, this guy had 14 and 8. And we were kind of joking during those kind of rivalry games and on the podcast that he's this version of what Kennedy Meeks was early in his career for a guy who would disappear against Miami or Louisville. But when you went to Cameron or you went to NC State or they came into the Smith Center, that guy was ready to go for those games.
Right. No, I think you're right. And even that game against Wofford, is that not sort of similar to what we saw from Meeks early in his career? I mean, remember, Kennedy started his career, I do not remember who the opponent was, but he had about 25 in the game, just dominated someone.
I think Michigan State.
That's right. And was just phenomenal. And then we knew, okay, this is what he can bring to the table potentially. Never really saw that again until probably his senior year, consistently. And that's the feel that Garrison brings. A lot of people, and this is what always makes me angry about this, there are so many people that want to slight Garrison as being a guy that, before he was, committed to Carolina, he was committed to Mississippi State. I think people forget that Mississippi State really used to recruit on a pretty high level. It's just through, some academic issues, a couple of guys that got in trouble off the court. Things sort of didn't pan out the way they were supposed to, and they look like a team that's worse than they actually were. Garrison Brooks was a guy that might not have been as highly ranked. I mean, he was still a 4-star guy, but he was not as highly talked about as some of the other guys. This is another guy that it's not on the same level as Luke May, but people have to understand this was not supposed to be a guy that came in and was automatically very influential in what Carolina did. He needed time to grow, and that's what we saw this year.
And I also think he got a lot of slight, like you were saying. He's not your prototypical Roy Williams big.
Right.
He doesn't run the floor exceptionally well. He's not, to be a big man, a great naturally gifted rebounder. And I think that it got under a lot of fans' skins because, okay, we took the time and effort to flip his recruitment for a guy that, isn't going to run the floor like Tyler Zeller or rebound the way Kennedy Meeks could as a senior. But we're seeing this guy develop into a guy that's going to give you quality minutes.
Right. He's
your best individual defender on the floor. Every time you walk on the floor, as long as he's here, he'll probably be our best defender. Great in team help defense. And a guy that, if he develops the offensive game, which we're about to talk about here in a second, is going to be a really solid collegiate big man for Roy Williams because Roy Williams can coach the big man position.
I agree.
And I'll be honest, when he was a freshman and we were seeing him with Sterling, I thought Sterling in the long run would pan out to be the better big
because he's a Roy style big.
He
correct?
kind of looks what you would.
Who would you take right now? Who do you think will be more influential going forward in their careers now out of the two?
Oh, it's easily Garrison Brooks because Roy Williams said yesterday in a media conference that Sterling Manley in the middle of June is not 100% healthy.
Right. Yep. I heard that. Same thing with Leakey as well, though.
That's different. Leakey's also returned to play, and also the severity of his ankle injury, what we're learning was a lot more severe than what we thought when he hurt the ankle at first. But that's a different topic.
Right.
Garrison Brooks is going to be a really big part of this team's success next year.
I
especially
totally agree
if you're putting a freshman big beside him now. Mm-hmm. It appears, even though we brought in the 2 transfers, that Carolina wants to get back to putting the ball in the post and playing inside out first. And so that's what we'll move on to when we look at what Garrison Brooks needs to improve getting ready for the 2019 year. He's got to, in my opinion, develop a more fluid back-to-the-basket game, but also show the ability to step out and hit a 10 to 12 foot jump shot. Is there anything else that you would like to, if you would think, I probably stole both of them because his back-to-the-basket game isn't great.
It's a good thing.
And his jumper, he would show it at times, but, this is modern basketball. You're about to widen the lane and all this other stuff. That jumper is going to be available more often. You got to hit it more consistently.
The jumper is huge because of the move from the 5 to the 4 as well. With the 5, you can get away with being inside the post and staying down there because you're a center. That's pretty much what you're supposed to do. Most of your work is supposed to be done in the paint. But you're right. When he moves to the 4 spot, and we're not saying that you're going to have to be able to turn into a stretch 4. This is not a guy that needs to develop a three-point shot. It's not. I don't see that happening. If it does happen, phenomenal. That would be great. We'd love that. But I don't see that happening, and I'm not concerned with that. I do want to see him be a little more consistent finishing at the basket because he did have some moments, especially late in the year, where he would get the ball in the post, and when that second defender would come over, he wasn't able to finish. You got to be able to put those in, especially if you're right there, and in some of these games that we saw down the stretch, you're going to be counted on more this year than you were last year. Last year, okay, if you missed that shot, well, you had a chance to make it up on the defensive end and come down and maybe Kobe or Cam hits a shot. Now, there will be guys that will step up, but these are not known commodities right now. So in Garrison's mind, you got to be going into the season thinking, they need me. Right now, I'm one of the veteran leaders on this team. And, I think if we're talking about, remember last year, or this past year, I'm referring it to as last year, we were talking about needing a vocal presence on the floor. I think that Garrison Brooks can probably fulfill that just from what we've seen from him now that he's a junior. I think he'll feel that his voice is more needed, and that's another area that I'd like to see him step up in, is, look, you are probably the guy that everybody's going to be looking towards as of right now, because every other position will likely be with a new starter. So we need you to be that guy out there. I think Roy Williams will look at him as well and say, look, Garrison, this is your time, buddy. This is where you have to step up. I want you to be that guy on the court, the vocal leader, the guy that leads by example, because you've been in my system for 2 years now, entering your 3rd year. So it'll be interesting to see. Those are the areas that I'd like to see him improve at. But, again, the biggest thing about Garrison Brooks, and you mentioned it, we didn't talk about it enough, his defense is phenomenal. I mean, he graded out consistently as one of the best, if not the best player defensively throughout the year. Even in some of those early games where nobody was playing defense. No one. Not even the fans in the stands were playing defense. I mean, there was nothing going on. It was that bad. So I think Garrison Brooks is a guy that got a lot of slack early on in his career, but now I think people are starting to realize he's an important part, and he stepped up to the role that he's been given so far. Let's see if he can do it this year.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy going into next year that I'll have my eye on early on in the year because he is going to be the most experienced starter on the floor. Mm-hmm. If he's not, he's got to become ready to play every night. Getting the body in better shape, and I think there's a lot was towards the end of the year where he wasn't finishing around the rim. I don't think his body was ready to handle the wear and tear of a long 30-game season of you playing 30 to 35 minutes a night. I saw a picture of him the other day from a scrimmage. His body looks great. So he's doing the work in the weight room. I don't mean to man-crush about this man's body because you're giving me that look. But
creeping us out here on the podcast.
He looks phenomenal. Maybe he add another tattoo or something like that will improve his jump shot, but definitely a guy that...
He can add another tattoo. Did you see that really quickly? Did you hear that yesterday in the press conference? So they showed Roy the picture of
I'm getting
Dion's
that tattoo, by the way.
You're too much of a baby to get that.
That's going
to hurt.
That's going on my back.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I'm getting that.
So is this a real thing? Like,
yes.
Are we putting... Okay.